Okay, let's begin with an opening prayer. Dear God of heaven and earth, we thank you for midweek. We thank you for all that the week holds, and we cherish the Holy Sabbath day. But we also appreciate midweek. And we thank you that we can gather together, though few in number. We are wanting to learn and to study more. Thank you for safety on the highways and byways, and we ask for your presence to be with us now. Bless us as we discuss some of the issues that we are facing in the Sunday law dispensation, and as they have unfolded from 2022 when Elder Tess did the Vespers series. Bless us now in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. And I'm going to review a little wee bit to do with the Vespers 7. And probably with that in mind, I think I'll begin actually by sharing screen. Hopefully it shows up. I did the whiteboards, a couple of them anyway, on slides, just so that it would be a little more readable, ideally. So just as I box. Just going to review a little wee bit, and a couple of the things probably that I didn't cover last time, as well as obviously getting into some new material, but our line beginning with the time of the end for the end of time, 1989, time of the end. Elder Tess emphasizes a lot, and it's probably in part because we need to really holding on to those chords, holding on to the fact that the midnight cry that occurred in 2018 did send light that will carry through all the way to the second advent. And that 2018 and into 2019, obviously, and even some carry over into 2020, but particularly 2018 with the Midnight Cry, really was the I won't say it was unsealing of a message, because it wasn't a large waymark, but at the same time, it was the opening for us to be able to have an inkling of what yet was going to be coming. Because it really was the point at which the two streams of information really did become more understood. And the 1989 to 2018 period, all of us in the movement, as well as Adventism in general, were on the right. And in 2018, we started to come to see, didn't know much at that point, but we started to come to understand some of the reasons that would become clearer as time went on as to why we would have to move from a conservative right Christian perspective. And that, therefore, 2018, Midnight Cry, it takes us right through to the second Advent. And we all are aware that there have been shakings within the movement. They happened before 2018. They certainly happened after. And on a variety of different topics, some of them going back through time. Things like organization derailed some people. Joel 4, and I mean, I'm not going to retrace the back history, but and certainly feminism, and obviously radical feminism as it came. But at any rate, the Midnight Cry in particular was highlighting for us two streams of information. It teaches us about two streams of information. But it's two streams of information that also portrays two streams of a political debate. We gathered some of that by looking back a little bit more. The 2016 election. And remember, we were within Adventism, most of us not paying attention to the political landscape and what all was going on, just more from a distance and a cursory passing, just being a human being on planet Earth. We were aware of some things, but no way did we see prophetic significance or study these things until really the Midnight Cry discovered that my nose is so sensitive. Changes. Anyway, the people who ended up leaving the movement, the light behind them from the Midnight Cry goes out. So they're basically left floundering without that foundation, without that anchor, and within some situations, maybe return to Adventism, or a variety, or go to the world. Whoops. And so the Midnight Cry is crucial to all of us. And it highlights with these two sides of a political debate, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, two left standing in the lead up to the 2016 election. It also, the two streams, let us really, as a parable, come to understand far better the two sides of the great controversy. God's government versus Satan's government, God's kingdom versus Satan's kingdom. And I stenciled out a bit of a line. Elder Tess brings out how the great controversy itself is an election. And we've heard it a few times, but it, in many ways, bears repeating, especially as we're in an election year. Almost half the countries in the world having elections, but in particular, the glorious land, of course, the United States. Their election, November 5th, 2024. And all this lead up that we've been living through up till even this point in time, in July 2024. So the great controversy itself is an election. Individuals, creatures in God's universe have been voting. And is going to the top line for the moment. Eden to Eden. We generally refer to it as 6,000 years, but period of time from creation and when this earth was created to when the earth is restored. And the cross, and this isn't to scale by any means, obviously. The cross, how to prevent that from happening. The cross, shortly after the change from, as I put there, BC to AD or BCE, before Common Era or CE Common Era, as it's often referred to today. But 31 AD, when Jesus was crucified, was an opportunity for everyone in God's universe to see the two sides. I'll mention more on that in a minute. I wanted to highlight that when sin entered all the way up to the cross, and we could even take it back further. I didn't, but it took this period of time, and we could say from Lucifer's rebellion in heaven, but the time it took to uproot the sympathy for Satan in the hearts of the unfallen angels was all this period of time, right up to the cross. The angels, and this is the unfallen angels, the angels finally understood, and their sympathy and Desire of Ages, Ellen White lets us know their sympathy for Satan was finally destroyed. Watching the scenes of the cross, all the lead up to the cross, the heavenly angels were very concerned for Jesus, and their any lingering wondering or any lingering sympathy for Satan was absolutely destroyed at the cross. But staying on that larger line for a moment, the 2016 election, midnight, two streams of information, two sides. The Midnight Cry in 2018, two sides. We've got the left and the right, but we had to move from the right to the left. We've got another election in 2020. Again, two sides, very evident. Donald Trump winning over Joe Biden, and pardon me, Hillary Clinton. Oh, did I say 2020? Yes, sorry. Donald Trump winning over pardon me, Joe Biden winning over Donald Trump. I'll get her, but yeah, I'm still back on 2016. So 2016, Trump defeating Hillary Clinton, Republicans beating the Democrats. 2020, Joe Biden Democrats beating out Donald Trump, at which point, of course, all the fight about stopping this deal, and it was fraud, etc., the whole fiasco leading up to January 6th and beyond has continued. Although in more recent days with the Republican National Convention that has been going on this week from Monday till tomorrow, it's almost been glaring how silent all of the various Republican speakers have been on the steal that the 2020 election was alleged to have been. Joe Biden stole that 2020 election, and they haven't really commented on it, and it's been relatively obvious, so that journalists are making note of it. Anyway, the 2024 election, we've got our Sunday law and close of probation, the 2024 election lying in this dispensation, and obviously then the second advent moving to the restoration of Eden. So 6,000 years of voting. And just moving to the bottom line, voting began in heaven, and Lucifer gaining originally half of the loyalty of the angels with his platform of freedom. But eventually it ended up dropping back down to a third of the angels remaining sided with him, and the others staying loyal to God. So some of the angels did move back onto God's side with the voting that took place before the final vote had gone in. And that was the point at which Satan's probation closed. But he was allowed down to this earth and has continued his platform in the history of this earth. And everyone is voting for one side or the other. So just to continue along this line, when sin enters, Eve and Adam vote, and they end up choosing, of course, Satan's kingdom, Satan's government. And so voting continues all the way through in every dispensation throughout history. And as I say, at the cross, it was an opportunity. We look back to the cross, others before the cross were looking forward, but all with proper insight, proper understanding, could see two sides. And obviously the events surrounding Christ's crucifixion, it was what clarified things for the heavenly angels, and never to be undone, their loyalty to God, fully assured. And then close of probation, I put that that's where the voting has ended. This world is the only place that has sin. The onlooking universe is watching very interestedly. And when Michael stands up, Daniel 12:1, close of probation, everyone's destiny has been set at that point. Manifested, then decided before. Okay, one of the other things that I wanted to highlight was more sort of what Elder Tess had finished with in Vespers number 7. And it was actually, I believe, Josephine that brought out some comments and just I wanted to, because I didn't get to it at all for the last study, and I wanted to just highlight it. And it was a quotation that was from the Present Truth, February 4th, 1886, paragraph 1. And it was published in the UK, but it was Ellen White writing. And so I'm going to read the paragraph, just make a couple of comments before we move on. It was not the dread of death which caused the inexpressible agony of Jesus. To believe this would be to place him beneath the martyrs in courage and endurance. For many of those who have died for their faith yielded to torture and death, rejoicing that they were accounted worthy to suffer for Christ's sake. Christ was the Prince of sufferers, but it was not bodily anguish that filled him with horror and despair. It was a sense of the malignity of sin, a knowledge that man had become so familiar with sin that he did not realize its enormity, that it was so deeply rooted in the human heart as to be well nigh impossible to eradicate. Just realized I changed some of the things to make it gender neutral. Obviously, I didn't cover off the whole paragraph, but continue. It was the guilt of sin bringing God's wrath upon him as man's substitute that broke the heart of Jesus. Every pang that he endured upon the cross, the blood drops that flowed from his head, his hands and feet, the agony that racked his frame, and the unutterable anguish that filled his soul at the hiding of God's face, speak to humanity, saying, "It is for love of you that Jesus consents to have these heinous crimes laid upon him. For you will he spoil the dominion of death and opens the gates of paradise in immortal life. He who stilled the angry waves by his word and walked the foam-capped billows, who made devils tremble and disease flee from his touch, who opened the eyes of the blind and raised the dead to life, offers himself upon the cross as the all-sufficient sacrifice for man." So I just wanted to pause for a moment for us to simply consider that the weight of sin bearing down on Jesus as he took the sins of all of humanity, of all time, on himself. But it also was this realization that humanity did not really yet understand the heinous character of sin, the terrible evil of sin, of voting for Satan's government, for Satan's kingdom, for Satan's freedom above equality. And it really was that crushed the heart of Christ and expired his human life. And with that, I just wanted to have us to 4 scriptures. Hebrews 12:2, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. In Desire of Ages, we're told that Jesus couldn't see through the portals of the tomb. But it really was him dying for every human being. And the joy of knowing that there would be some that would fully come back reconciled to God, that allowed Jesus to be able to endure everything that the cross represented, all of the physical pain, but all of the emotional and spiritual pain, because it was at the cross that the sundering occurs between the Godhead, because as we know, Jesus will bear glorified humanity for the remainder of eternity. In John 15:18, the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. And then Romans 7:13 really was the main scripture I wanted us to just consider. Was then that which is good made death unto me? This is Paul speaking. God forbid. But sin, that it might appear sin, working death in me by that which is good, that sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. I want to just zero in on that first clause. Sin, that it might appear sin. And then the last portion, part C of that verse, sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. The commandment is that which is good in the previous phrase. And sin works death because God's good commandments help us to see what is sin. And it's that sin by the commandment might become exceedingly sinful. We can come to understand how horrible sin is. And now I'm not talking in terms of a moral, the do's and don'ts of the 10 Commandments directly, but it's more the voting that we are doing and all human beings are doing in terms of choosing God's kingdom and God's government, or choosing Satan's kingdom and Satan's. And the last scripture, Hebrews 3:13, but exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. We're encouraged to do that, to encourage each other and to not allow any of us to not come to an understanding. We're individually responsible, but at the same time, that's the purpose behind our movement. That's the purpose behind us helping each other, listening to studies, doing lateral reading, studying beyond what is presented, and then teaching each other. An audience amongst ourselves in some respects, but at the same time, it's so that we will be prepared and be fully understanding of the sinfulness of sin and everything that's implied by God's platform. And with that, we'll come to the next screen, next whiteboard. And this is still, in a sense, still a review of parts of Vespers number 7, leading into Vespers number 8. But we've got the I'll say full political spectrum, I guess, left wing, right wing, but the centrist place, we've got the right wing full political spectrum. And what it consists of is, we've always, certainly as Seventh-day Adventists, but even earlier in the movement, we've focused on the Protestantism and being conservative and in essence right wing. That's only a portion of the full right wing political spectrum, and it's dealing, yes, with Christian morality and an individual, say somebody running for president, can sell their faith. This brings out Jimmy Carter as a Democrat. If he really wants to gain more support, he can make it clear that he's a Christian and possibly bleed some of those on the right who heretofore perhaps would have voted Republican, but will move into a position to actually vote for a Democrat, and simply because of that selling his faith that Jimmy Carter did. And the Supreme Court of the United States, if you're Protestant on the right, you're wanting to hear things that are going to encourage you to vote, and to vote for whoever's running. If it's a Donald Trump, you're going to want to hear that he's going to be regaining the Supreme Court, putting conservative justices in place on it. If you're a Protestant, you're going to want to hear the overturning of abortion aspect. You're going to want to see that the person you're supporting is going to promise to undo Roe v. Wade. And if you're a Protestant, you're going to appreciate that your candidate is going to see that Christianity is under threat, and you're going to want to see Christianity protected. That enough with this political correctness, that we need to protect Christianity, and that your perceived threat, whatever direction it's coming from, is going to be heard, going to be listened to, and you're going to have some redress. And then beyond the Protestantism, because there's a whole spectrum on the right wing, lies the atheism. And just before I get to that, I actually put in this other box to make a couple of comments. Sources of Christian apostasy is the same for the Protestantism, the Catholicism, the Adventism, and for us in the beginning in the movement, for us as well. So we have to shed the apostasy and move left. And why? Before we can go to work, before going to work. And I'll just come back for a moment to the right wing. Further right, atheism is far right. And what I have here, win a political election, anybody who's running for office, in this case, I'll say office of president of the United States of America, you want to appeal to the broadest segment of society. And as a consequence, you're looking beyond the Protestant bubble, and you're wanting to draw in as many as you possibly can. And Donald Trump in this period of time, I'll just say the last month, it's been beyond that, but he is very aware that he is going to need every vote possible. Because even though the polls are not necessarily, a lot of stock isn't put in them, at the same time, the indications are that it's going to be a very close race between Republicans and Democrats. Sometimes one's a little bit ahead, sometimes another, but even the margin of error indicates that even after the disastrous debate Joe Biden had a couple of weeks back now, but even there, he's only been down a few points from Donald Trump. So, and as has been pointed out, there are a lot of Republicans that don't like Donald Trump. Some of his former staff, even some that have held office in his administration, are not supporting him. So Donald Trump is very aware he needs every vote he can possibly get. And we know from previous studies, and certainly in Vespers 7, far-right trinity, consisting of the men's right activist, the libertarian, and the atheist. These men's rights groups are the broader spectrum that Trump very definitely has wanted to tap into, starting with Steve Bannon and recognizing that there was this whole untapped demographic of young men, particularly, playing video games and a part of this larger community, and work to, wow, if we can get them energized to into politics and voting, that's a whole new market. Sort of like with the growth of plant-based foods. It's spread everywhere, in a lot of jurisdictions, at any rate, certainly in the Western world, whether in Australia, New Zealand, or in Europe, North America, and plant-based markets opening up. The producers just saw it as a whole untapped demographic to be able to sell to. And in some cases, it's a little bit like that. Donald Trump is selling something, and he wants as many buyers as possible. So he's gone beyond. He knows he needs the evangelical Protestant vote, but he's going beyond that. So men's rights groups, basically atheists, for the most part, libertarians, valuing freedom over equality, and they believe males are getting a raw deal, that feminism and women, it's just generally, but certainly feminism, is a con, and that they want to see it not have any effect, and because males are under threat. The roles that males have held traditionally for eons of time are being upended, and it goes even to the point of misogyny, and that brings in a whole bunch of different kinds of abuse, even right to beyond doxing and some of the things that occurred with Gamergate, spoken about previously, but to even brutalizing and even to the point of death females in their sphere of influence, or even complete strangers. Okay, so the group as well, many of them atheists. It's a post-Christian era that we have been living in, and so church and state is not an issue. The people that Trump is wanting to tap into are atheists, and yes, they'll accept politicians who happen to be Christian as a side adjunct to the office that they're holding, but they themselves are not voting because they want Christian principles upheld. What they're voting for is, and supportive of, is the freedom over equality. And so the militia groups, like the Oath Keepers, like the Proud Boys that Trump said to stand by, Proud Boys that in many cases come to protect, and that played a pivotal role in January 6th, 2021, the three percenters and the Boogaloo movement. And then others, of course, is QAnon, and QAnon is let's see, I'll just read little couple of bullet points. QAnon is a decentralized fight rooted in a baseless conspiracy theory that the world is controlled by the deep state, a cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles, and former President Donald Trump is the only person who can defeat it. So similar to Alex Jones, but different. QAnon followers believe that this deep state will be brought to justice during a violent day of reckoning, known as the storm. And it originally arose in 2017, but it's become a powerful force. And they were amongst those that said that the 2020 election was stolen. So I wanted to bring up a point that Elder Tess highlights, and freedom and equality are what are in intention, and equality being on the left. Sorry, I'm gonna get dizzy. Equality being on the left and freedom being on the right. And the point that needs to be remembered is that the more freedom is emphasized, the further right you move. So I made the F's for the freedom gain a little bit in stature as you're moving further right. And Steve Bannon and others have coined that phrase, alt-right, alternative right. But the far right are aligning on shared views. And it's interesting because libertarianism is the example of the pure freedom. And in reality, you know, when you have pure, absolute freedom, it actually isn't isn't possible. Like the utopia doesn't really exist. And we'll come to that a little bit more. So let me just go forward for a second to see. Yeah, you know what? I had another slide and it ended up in, just going to stop share screen. It's another. It's,
Can I interrupt?
Yes, go ahead, Maka. No, please do.
I'm absolutely, but I'm readjusting from Alberta time to BC time with the studies, and my goodness, that hour, you know, when you're waking up at 3:30 in the morning. So I will try to be less tardy in the future, to say the least. Debbie, I hope you're finding what you're looking for, but just I joined in late. I don't know what you covered or what people know or which presentations I've seen, but I've definitely been looking at Putin lately, and it's like you see a progression, you know, like kind of how you see with the kingdoms in the book of Daniel. Uh, Now I'm kind of seeing this progression with this model of masculinity and its superiority to femininity uh, everywhere. Whereas before, I probably would have said, the things that we're teaching are probably demonic. Like, what are you talking about? Of course, Eve transgressed, and she's the reason why we're in this mess. But lately I've looked at the history of like just witchcraft and prostitution, and like really women have been the ones demonized. And it's been used, whether it's their menstruation cycle, which is necessary for life, that's demonized, um, or it's Putin who's using the media to uh, mold the narrative, which is what Trump is backing off of. Sorry, just getting back to what you're talking about, but Trump is really the progression. He saw a methodology that worked, right, in practice. It got him power, and he wants more of it. And we can only look on. I've been looking to Putin lately, anyways, and seeing some of the parallels with Trump's strategy. And of course, you'll find these radicalized groups that Putin is kind of responsible for. He got these guys fired up with fake news, and he radicalized a lot of these movements that we're looking at that are anti-abortion and free choice, or you know what I'm saying? Like Putin
Yes.
and Trump are closely, to me, uh, one owes the other a great debt of gratitude, in the sense that the state and the people are separate in my mind. You can be the state that serves the voice of the people, or you can be authoritarian. You've got that strong boy manly man front, right, that leads the way, or you've got the voice that's the other, the witches and if it's not my religion, if it's not how I think, it's definitely demonized. So I appreciate that you're going over the stuff, Debbie. I see you're writing on the board.
Might not be able to read it too well, but as you were talking, yeah, Maka, it was something I had been thinking about over the last couple of days as well. This Putin. But it really isn't about people in a sense. It's about this about Trumpism, not Trump. It's about Putin. Basically as dictator. And this sort of philosophy, of course, this is church over state. But King of the North is and what I was thinking about, and I may not have that exactly diagrammed properly, but what I was thinking about earlier in the week was how similar it's getting to be these two well, certainly leaders, but different but similar. That for the most part, the authoritarian leanings and so on that drive both of them are so similar. you can see it unfolding more and more. I mean, we're in the period where we'll learn more in terms of the death of the king of the south and the change of the king of the north to the seventh beast. But at the same time, I wanted to just make mention of Reddit because it was in and just bring it in terms of social media and the role that it has played. And some of you may know of more than what I should kind of just put it on. So first off, Facebook. Prior to it, of course, was something called MySpace. Had some family members that whatever. Facebook, and it actually had a different name. It was changed to Facebook in the year 2005. The name of it, but and Reddit. So it's impacted more in our movement, and then I'm going to put Tumblr, and I'm not sure if it fully is a separate one. Telegraph is another method of communication, not so much. Oh, I actually meant to put X the first, former Twitter. It's amazing how many of the journalists still will say the former Twitter. Every time they mention X, they always say formerly Twitter or something to that effect.
I've noticed. I've noticed the same.
Truth Social.
Podcasters too.
Yes. I think it would be in that genre as well. Snapchat, Instagram, go on.
Oh, is there ever gonna be a time when we don't call it X Twitter?
Yes, but there are differences. And I'm not going to go into these ones. To listen down, but there are differences between Facebook and Twitter that I feel need to just be emphasized. Facebook is about the individual, those that have a Facebook account, and Reddit deals with, I'm going to put the word collective. And I felt that Rachel put it very well. People you know sharing what doesn't interest you. You know, in many cases, it's what you have for supper. And Reddit, on the other hand, is a forum that is set up purposely to involve strangers because they can be anonymous. And so it's in essence the opposite. People you don't know sharing what you're passionate about. What interests you. And it was almost the diagram, a larger forum, which is basically the Reddit website, and obviously you can get it via app and all the rest, but it has all article subreddits. So these are the subreddits. And this is the giant forum, if you like. And the whole purpose, and I don't need to spend this is, I didn't fully cover it when we were dealing with last time, but the purpose of the Reddit, and the reason we even just we're looking at it, Rachel, you presenting on it, is to create value as part of the community that exists in the subreddits, rather, and to grow the community. And it's a forum that is set up. It's more complexity to the simplified version, but of people posting. I don't, you still use that word. I'm not sure whether they do or not, but you know, on whatever topic, and they can post texts, they can post photos, videos, even upload movies, reels, and so they're sharing and memes, different things, and the name Reddit is like you're saying that you have read it. In other words, I have read it. And that's it. People vote. And they can upvote something if it's something that they really like or they really agree with, they'll upvote it. Things can get downvoted. And what ends up happening, any of you that have posted anything for sale, for example, on a buy and sell Facebook page or Kijiji or, you know, whatever, something like that. I'm not sure what's available in Belize. Okay. Your comment. Reddit has better material, but has been hacked by endless bots of the government level type propaganda, like all other platforms today. And that's it. Reddit, you can find out if you Google something, some of the things that will pop up in the Google search will be things that have been shared on Reddit. And I was doing some research quite a while back on atheism. And sure enough, there ended up being quite a few different things in the Reddit and subreddit. I'm not totally familiar with it, but at any rate, but the upvoting and the downvoting can happen just over time. If something just sits there long enough, it'll sort of like your buy and sell post on a Facebook site or whatever, it will drop down as other people post other things and so on. And so it should eventually not be seen by anybody, which is why, of course, something like Kijiji or, you know, someone trying to sell something, they'll keep posting the same item over and over again. So it goes to the top of the of the stack. And bots will retweet and promote videos by upvoting. That's interesting. And of course, in the era of AI, in the 2016 election, it was Russian interference and it's and I mean it certainly is still there. Chinese interference, Canadian politics, some of the more recent things that have come out, but at the same time, AI is now, and all the different bots have probably even expanded beyond to where AI entering into some of the political landscape and the results and so on is going to be pretty problematic. Anyway, I just wanted to mention Reddit just simply because it is where so many on the far right hang out. And it's the users on Reddit are 18 to 29-year-olds, about 36% of the Reddit population fall into that demographic, 18 to 29-year-olds. 63% are male, and it's the 7th most used or most visited site in the United States. And even it was mentioned that Australia is the second country most using Reddit, which was surprising to Rachel. She found that out. And these are hundreds of thousands, like 130,000 subreddits. And I've forgotten the number. Was it 600,000? Yeah, I don't have it there, but at any rate, the other thing I'm just wanting to quickly mention is in terms of change that happened with the incident that happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, when young man there were Unite the Rally protesters protesting, and what they were protesting, Unite the Rally is a white supremacist pardon me, I'll start that again. Peaceful protesters were protesting against the Unite the Right rally that was being held over 2 days in Charlottesville, Virginia, August 12th, 11th and 12th, 2017. Anyway, a gentleman, 20-year-old man, similar to the 20-year-old who just recently made the attempted assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but James Alex Field Jr., and he is the one that was espousing neo-Nazi beliefs and had come to really idolize Hitler, Adolf Hitler, and he drove his vehicle into this peaceful group of protesters, and he killed a young lady, 32-year-old by the name of Heather Heyer. And she was somebody who believed in equality and was against oppression in a lot of different contexts around the world and so on, and actually had the night before only decided to go to the protest, felt she had to go. And previously, a day or two prior to that, had felt it'd be too dangerous. So she ended up not going, or she wasn't planning to go, but in the end did go, and here she lost her life. And there were 35 people that were injured, some seriously. And anyway, there had been a KKK, Ku Klux Klan rally just days before in July 8th of that year in also Charlottesville. So it gives you a bit of an idea of sort of where some of the emotions were running, perhaps. And so the Unite the Right is the white supremacist group. And anyway, won't share anything more. Oh, pardon me. That's why I was sorry, 2 points. Trump right and left. Trump. I'll read and then I'll put it up on the board. I think there is blame on both sides, commenting on this event. I have no doubt about it. You also had people that were very fine people on both sides. He later qualified that he wasn't referring to the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists, that they should never, be that they should be condemned, totally condemned and so on. But at any rate, this fine people on both sides, it's basically was he has been remembered for. In other words, those who disagree that white supremacism has fine people in it don't believe, they believe he was saying what he really meant originally and just tried to qualify it later. Biden is using the Charlottesville event as the reason, and he brings it out at various times at public rallies and so on, but the reason why he ran in 2020. Because when he saw what was happening and how Trump responded, about these fine people and so on, it was enough to galvanize Joe Biden into deciding to run for president. And he feels that his business, the work he wants to get done, still hasn't been accomplished. So he's staying in the race, he's referred many times. Something to deal with some something I'll just mention. I had it on the screen, but the far right Trinity so who does it consist of again? The three. I want to unmute and just who's the
Sorry,
far right
did you
Trinity?
ask
Go
a
ahead,
question?
Maka.
Did you
Yes,
ask
who
a
are the
question?
yes, what are the three types of people that make up the far right trinity? We were talking about,
If anybody wants to help me out, I am taking helpers.
well, Monica, you were talking about it.
I just can't
Some of
remember
your
the language we were
comments.
using.
The
Sorry.
men's rights
Men's
activist
rights. That's
kind of
right.
person. So
Yeah, it's all
MRA,
about the guys.
right?
If you're
MRA.
not, if you're not owned, you are the owner.
But you
It's
know,
my, it's my right.
I
You're
learned.
taking my baby. Where are you going? No, honestly, it takes a lot of different shapes, is what I am starting to see. It's expressed in different ways. This is one of them, right? Like men have rights too, which leads to a lot of problematic things. Please help me, someone with the rest.
Libertarians and the atheists.
That's right.
Thank
Atheists.
you, Annabelle. And you're right, Maka. It was like the blue when Black Lives Matter was being hashtagged a lot and being spoken about, and there were marches, protests, right? And it spread around the world, and people started saying blue lives matter, or people would say all lives matter. It's it's trying to nullify the Black Lives Matter. But I learned two other terms. PUA, pick up artist. PUAs, pick up artists. And then the other one was, I had heard of this one before. Men going their own so MGTOWs, men going their own way. And as I think you mentioned in your remarks, the misogyny many times is pretty thick within some of these groups. But Annabelle, sorry, I didn't put up the rest of
Yeah,
it.
she helped
Annabelle
him.
gave
We've
us
got
the
the
other.
activists, and we've got the atheists.
So
And then we've got the libert, libertarians, who for me, as you were talking about it, made me think about how those rights are only dished out to a certain number of people. So freedom is not free for all, if that makes sense. In extreme cases, sure, let's all shoot it out, but the battle has already been won when it comes to male versus female. There's no going back. You can kind of propose material for the Black versus white in the sense that you can try to debunk the what are they called? The Nazis who did whoever, the cranial size, Black versus white. You can kind of debunk that science, but there's more prevalence of science that will support a more women are from Mars, women are from Venus, men are from Mars kind of theology I find today that pervades society. You can find a lot more justification. Yeah. So I get lost because they're all pretty related, but I think I was talking about the libertarian perspective and how when you were talking it to me it was like, yes, liberty, but liberty for who? It's mostly the male voice that gets the liberty to express itself. And so forth.
And
So really the far right you go for me, you're so at the little f that you have closer to equality, you have freedom for women and men maybe to speak or to act, right? Closer to that middle point. But the further you go right, it becomes more masculine dominated. Yeah, you start to see more of your male right activists and more of your atheists, I would say, because actually, I don't know when it comes to atheism, because with religion, there's justification to give women an equal right religiously, but even more of a voice to suppress it. So you might just become more religious as you go more right, but that's what we see in the States kind of playing out with the Republican Party.
well, you're right. In terms of that last comment, Maka, and that's it. Yeah. I just wanted to picking up on some of what you said. This, well, actually, rather than a line, because our movement hasn't as such been placed in a definite spot on. Oh, goodness. There we go. What I wanted to
So
do
used to drawing a
was
line.
just create the marks without the line. The centrist so we've got left wing and right wing. But you're right, Maka, that middle ground does have some leeway in terms of what it is that they're supporting. In some contexts, they'd be equality over freedom. And in other things, they'd be freedom over equality. So there is a little bit of
The further right you go,
fluidity.
yeah, the
here
further right
in
you
the
go,
centrist area.
the further right you go, the more exclusivity you'll get. So that excludes homosexuals, right? So yes, you had a voice, but now you're homosexual. So even more right.
So Protestantism, we had it on the screen earlier, but Protestantism, and we've over that span of 2018 to 2020, Moving left. It's the us. Results of the midnight cry. Adventism. Still here. This would be Catholicism. But the Christian morality is what's going to gain votes with the right wing side of the we had Supreme Court. And we have abortion issue. Becomes the umbrella term. It's the 1973 law being undone by adopts the Jackson Women's Health Center, and then protect Christianity, make America great again, and Israel. And it's interesting because Israel, as we know, the situation in Gaza that's going on right now, but Israel is a complex issue. And I'll just put the Arab-Israeli war of 1948, Israel becoming its own nation and its own country, and 1949, which was a big part of the whole thing that exacerbated this situation. We've got a Gaza-Israel war in 2006. We've got further, pardon me, that was a conflict. And then we've got the 6-Day War. We've got the Gaza War, or pardon, 1966. And the Gaza War of 2008. And the Hamas, Israel, Islam. So complexity, but Protestantism is going to support, for the most part, Israel. Then we've got Ukraine. And actually, I won't put it there because it's not upheld on that side. Where we'll do it is over here. Ukraine. And again, Crimea in 2014. And interestingly, February of 2014. And we've got Ukraine, of course, Crimea being a part of Ukraine. we've got Ukraine itself revealed in February of 2022. So these complex political situations, in a sense, reflect some of what the radicalization that has been occurring in the United States affect what gets affected by that radicalization. And it's interesting because the 1960s saw a person by the name of Barry Goldwater, which is, we had been reading the article about what libertarians get wrong, and Rand Paul, what libertarians and Rand Paul get wrong. So Barry Goldwater, a Republican, and interestingly, sort of like the Rachel Maddow interview with Rand Paul, where he didn't want to be pinned down. He got to a place where he admitted, no, I agree with the Civil Rights Act, but, and in essence, it came about that he doesn't uphold the Civil Rights Act as a libertarian who's involved with the Republican Party. His views are all libertarian. Barry Goldwater agreed with Civil Rights Acts. And I did some research on that, which I won't go into right now. It's out of time, but Civil Rights Act, there were actually quite a lot. My notes went down. Almost every year there was another Civil Rights Act, but it was the he agreed with the, yeah, no, I didn't write it down. The 1950, either 57 or 58 one. And I think a previous one to that. But the Civil Rights Act of 1964, he wasn't supporting it. Particularly, same thing that Rand Paul had issue with, Title II and the Title VII portions of that act. And 1970s, so the era of the civil rights movement, right? The 1970s was when the Libertarian Party separated itself to its own party. And in 2008, there were other things that occurred in there, but I'll just say the libertarian philosophy begins making inroads on the Republican Party. And we had the Tea Party. Give one name, Sarah Palin, Alaska, as an example. But it's this libertarian freedom over equality philosophy that is starting to radicalize the Republican Party. And it so does anyone know what the GOP stands for? Right now, the GOP is having its RNC being Republican National Convention, but GOP is Grand Old Party. And I'd almost put an apostrophe instead of the D, because I'm guessing it's almost like Grand Old Opry. I'm always guessing it's sort of said that way. And that's it. The Republican Party, for the most part, it was white, Protestant, male, he's in leadership, and traditional conservatism. And that's sort of the older Republicans that still remain alive. Some of them still will hold out, and some of them are ones that don't appreciate Donald Trump. But and instead, it's moved now to this younger generation, beyond being religious at all, being atheist, which actually is a religion as well. But at any rate, it's the radicalization that has been working towards this very point in time. And it's interesting, J.D. Vance. So we've got the November 5th, 2024 election. US election. And we've got Joe Biden and his running mate, Kamala Harris, of course. On the left for the Democrats. And of course, we've got Donald Trump and his newly named, probably speaking a little bit earlier as we initially started our meeting this evening, speaking at that point in time at the RNC, Republican National Convention. Again, a relative unknown, been in the Senate for 18 months, but will please some of the right-wing people because he is young, has a family that they're testing him on traditional values, family values, you know, the traditional family of Christian right kind of context. And he also espouses a lot of the things that the Christians in the right wing want to hear. No funding to Ukraine. Doesn't care about Ukraine. Is how he had put it at one point. What you say can come back to bite you at some point later, especially if it's on the internet. And against abortion, and would like to see a federal ban, and Oh, my mind blanks out all of the different things. Just think right wing, and some are actually suggesting that he is more extreme than Donald Trump. And so
I can help,
anyway,
Debbie. I can help.
sorry, go
So
ahead.
they want restrictions to legal abortions. They want to discourage and prohibit recreational drug use. They want to promote gun ownership, ease gun restrictions. They oppose transgender rights movements. Yeah. And in their foreign policy, the party wants to establish a neoconservative and support tough stances against China and Russia, while the populist faction is isolationist and supports non-interventionism. So they want to watch other countries do whatever they do, whether they're war crimes, they don't care. Basically, let other countries do what they're doing, and we will deal with our country that's pretty messed up right now. So this kind of like, if we don't
Which is what
fix
Putin said. Forgive me
Egg.
to interrupt. The
Yeah,
spokesperson, the State Department, I think was kind of equivalent spokesperson for Russia. That's what they were saying after the assassination attempt by Donald Trump, that maybe you need to spend your money on fixing up your own domestic issues and so on. Something to that effect. Sorry, like I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, and that's so true. And you should hear that. I don't know if you've heard the things that Putin says about African countries. My goodness. If anyone took those things that he said to heart, they wouldn't care about any international politics. They would just be the view would be so morbid about where they're at, and they'd be so focused on dealing with their current issues, they wouldn't involve themselves in current foreign affairs. He really he knows how to talk down to other countries. He opposes democracy. I don't know if I know anyone that he thinks is doing anything right, except for his successors, who were Stalin and Lenin before him. Right? So this progression, this compounding effect, the not want to be in a position where you can be defied. So Putin was the first to excuse villains who he would in turn reinstate after they went through court cases that they blew off. And Trump is doing the same thing now. He's going through court cases that we all thought, surely he'd be convicted or charged, or there'd be some repercussions. It's certainly not running for office again. But this idea is perpetuating. Katia spoke of Italy, I think. There are small wins in certain countries where the right is not elected to be the leading party or the party in majority. Actually, coming from South Africa recently, I just spoke to my cousin and I was like, so how did the elections go? And he was like, I'm surprised you're interested, but what you said definitely made a note in my mind, because I thought for sure the left, that's always been winning, for the people, is always going to win. But now South Africa is in a situation where that government that was a majority government in parliament is now having to do more of a, what do they call it? Like a conjoined government, or where you
Collaborating
can't,
with the
yeah,
opposition.
you don't have the majority of seats in parliament.
Or
The other
coalition.
exactly, it's a coalition government, and this is the first for South Africa. Before this being apartheid and all of that, like they have a crazy history. but all of this still playing into the global narrative, because it just continues to show this weakening of a resolve for equality rather than just freedom, because freedom is only for a few select with power and dominance, which generally are embodied by the male figure that we've grown to all know so well. So, and yeah,
The
women have got no
patriarchal
place. Yeah, women have got no
blueprint.
place there. And the trans people, you're not even in the running. You're demonic. We will not become Sodom and Gomorrah and be judged by fire and hailstone because we allow you to exist. And most people don't realize how extreme it is, but it really is that. That's why homosexuals are being executed in countries still, because people are so fearful of this religious narrative. So I know I might have heard something about church and state not being so clearly cut and defined or such a huge threat, but it's definitely a huge push for a lot of the right-wing beliefs that could lead to a death decree and are leading to a death decree for people currently in our global environment. So not to cut you off, Debbie, but you know.
No, Maka, I didn't want to cut you off at all, but we need to end. I mean, there'd be a little bit more that could be said, but we're well over time. And I mean, just reviewing a couple of the key points is in terms of, well, the complexity, understanding the ethos of the right wing. And then as we move to the left wing, the far left, and to really clarify for ourselves what the distinctions are, because libertarianism, there was a comment made in one article that I read that the libertarians can move fairly fluidly amongst Republicans because it's muddy, right? There's not clear cut. Much as I mentioned it last time, but the libertarians booed Donald Trump when he spoke at their convention, and so on. There are libertarians that still yet will come around and support Donald Trump in the final vote leading into the 2024 election. But
I hadn't considered that.
we need to
yeah.
keep in mind how I started. I just wanted to highlight that in terms of the heinousness of sin. And even for those of us in the movement, as we've come along and learned a lot of different things, or are still in the process of learning a lot of different things, and have shifted mindset on a variety of issues and topics, our position has moved over left. But at the same time, the subtlety of sin, and as you pointed out, Mark, I mean, patriarchy and the sexism that has been there from the entrance of sin is the oldest form of discrimination on the earth. In fact, actually, I don't have my Eden to Eden line, but actually informs the other curses. I mean, sexism, gender equality being the first curse, but sexism informs the that next waymark that we list as worship. It's an umbrella term that takes in a lot more, as well as the racism waymark there that are the three curses coming from sin in the Garden of Eden, stemming from basically Adam and Eve sin, but the sexism is the one that carries all the way through time and informs all other forms of oppression and discrimination, which is why the radical feminism is something we have to really come to live, because it's the last one in the chiasm, Eden to Eden, the last one that is being dealt with before the close of probation, before the second advent, and to understand the full heinousness of sin, the sin that broke the heart of Christ, crushed the life out of him as he bore it, and that realization that very few human beings really will come to understand. And may we be in that group. And on that note, we'll close with prayer.
Thank you.
Dear God of heaven and earth, we thank you so much for the coolness of evening as hot temperatures through the day can rest for a while. We thank you for the truths that have been revealed to us over the course of time, from 1989 onwards, whatever point we each individually came into the movement, just learning the path to heaven. And we have a tremendous responsibility to really come to understand for ourselves so that we can be able to be ready for our work. And that we thank you for bearing with us. Forgive us where any of us, have held out on making complete breaks with the Christian apostasy and moving fully where we need to be on the left wing, on God's side, honoring God's government and kingdom. So help us continue to be with each one of us through the remainder of this week. And we thank you for trusting us with these truths. In Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. And with that,
Yeah.